Namaste, aloha, welcome to Bhagavad Gita as it is class. My name is Janapati Das. We will continue today with reading through chapter 8, starting chapter 8. We've done a read through of chapter 8 and we will continue. Please accept my respects, everyone. Let me offer my respectful obeisances to Jagat Guru Siddhaswara Bhananda Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada and pray for his mercy upon me, and to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, my spiritual grandfather, and the translator of our Bhagavad Gita as it is, and his purport. We will start with some chanting, so please join along. Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Gora Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Stayate Namo Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Gora Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasade Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasade Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Adibo Nitagor Nitagor Haribo Haribo Nitagor Nitagor Haribo Haribo Nitagor Nitagor Haribo Haribo Hare Krishna Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto them. There was one point in chapter 7 before, and it occurred to me when I was listening back to the recording that I wanted to cite the Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada was making a point, and he cited two places. Let me see if I can find it. Two locations in the Bhagavad Gita referring to. Let me see if I can find it. Where could it be? Let's see. Maybe I don't see that. Well, maybe I'll have to find it later and bring it up into another class so we don't waste a lot of time doing that. Right now, just a quick okay, well, maybe I'll have to look for that later. All right, so anyway, we'll go to, just check it one more time. Last. Okay, I just was listening to it and I realized that I had heard two places where he was quoting two different parts of the Bhagavad Gita, but he didn't put the verses in, and I wanted to read the verses. But so chapter 8, we've gone now, and Krishna and Arjuna are going to dig a little deeper. Text 1, Attaining the Supreme, chapter 8. Arjuna uvacha kim tam brahma kim adhyatmam kim karma parushatam adi bhutam cha kim proktam adi daivyam kim uchate. Arjuna uvacha, Arjuna said, kim what, tat that, brahma brahman, kim what, adhyatmam the self, kim what, karma fruit of activities, purushatam O Supreme Person, adi bhutam the material manifestation, cha and kim what, praktam is called, adi daivam the demigod, kim what, uchate is called. So, translation, Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman, what is self, what are fruit of activities, what is this material manifestation, and what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. So, once again, this is the way Vedic knowledge is understood. As a disciple approaches the spiritual master, the pure devotee, and inquires questions that are on his heart or on his mind. And here Arjuna is doing this not because he's foolish and just unknowledgeable, but mainly because he wants to set a standard for people who read the Bhagavad Gita later on. They will know the answers, all the answers. So Arjuna is inquiring from his spiritual master humbly, as is instructed in chapter 4, verse 32. Just try to learn the truth by approaching the spiritual master, right? And surrender unto him, render service to him humbly. So here he is asking, what is Brahman? What is self? What are fruit of activities? What is material manifestation? What are the demigods? Lots of questions, really very good. In this chapter, Lord Krishna answers these different questions of Arjuna, beginning, what is Brahman? The Lord also explains karma, fruitive activities, devotional service, and yoga principles, and devotional service in its pure form. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains the supreme absolute truth is known as Brahman, Paramama, and Bhagavan, so the three features of God realization. In addition to the living entity, individual soul is also called Brahman. Arjuna also inquires about Atma, which refers to body, soul, and mind. So we'll see this word Atma pop up in the Sanskrit, and it refers to basically the collective, the body, the mind, and the soul, and also, according to the Vedic dictionary, Atma refers to the mind, soul, body, and senses also. So the complete package, We talk about the whole living being and his material coverings as well as Atma. When we refer to the living entity, the spirit soul, we are talking about Jivatma. Arjuna has addressed the Supreme Lord as Purushottam, Supreme Person, which means he was putting these questions not simply to a friend, but to the Supreme Person, knowing him to be the supreme authority, able to give definitive answers. So, knowing Krishna is, we will know all, all we need to know. And this basically puts, when we have the word Purushottam, the Supreme Person, Krishna, it states that Krishna is the Supreme Person. There's no denying. So sometimes actually I've seen that, people who are monists or impersonalists try to translate the Bhagavad Gita, and it gets harder and harder to deny the fact that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they just try to manipulate and change things and send you off the cliff, basically, in knowledge. Text 2. Adi ajna katam kotra deheshmin madhusudan playana kale cha katam jinyoshina niyatat mabihi adi ajna, the Lord of Sacrifice. Love that. Adi Ajna, the Lord of Sacrifice. Katam, how, ka, who, atra, here, dehe, in the body, asmin, in this, Madhusudan, O Madhusudana, playana kale, at the time of death, cha, end, katam, how, jenyaha, be known, asi, you can, niyata atma bihi, by the self-controlled. Translation, so more questions here. How does this Lord of Sacrifice live in the body? And which part does he live of Madhusudan? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? So a pretty meaty chapter. So he's defining what is Brahman, what is self, what are fruitive activities, what is material manifestation, what are the demigods, how does this Lord of Sacrifice live in the body, in which part does he live, and how can those who are engaged in bhakti yoga know Krishna at the time of death? So lots of great questions. Purport: the Lord of Sacrifice accepts Indra and Vishnu. Vishnu is the chief of the primal demigods, including Brahma and Shiva, and Indra is the chief of the administrative demigods. Both Indra and Vishnu are worshipped by yajna performances. So we're backing up, the word yajna refers to sacrifice. So we have to have sacrifices in the Vedic system, but also in general. People don't like to sacrifice things, but they do it all the time. We have a sacrifice, if you go to work, you sacrifice your free time so that you can make some money and then you have that fruit of, you have what you've made from the work to use for something, in which most cases is for our own pleasure. So we sacrifice. The mother sacrifices his sleep to take care of the baby because she cares about the baby. So there are all kinds of sacrifices. We're always sacrificing things. And there are also Vedic sacrifices that you give up your well-being, the things that you've earned, to give to a particular demigod or God or Krishna, in hopes of being pleasing to God. But or in the cases of demigod, you want to be pleasing, but you also want to get something back in return. So Yajna is also a name of Krishna, because Krishna, it's with the capital Y. Krishna is the source of all sacrifices. All sacrifices are ultimately for Vishnu or for Sri Krishna. But here Arjuna asks, who is actually the Lord of Yajna, sacrifice, and how is the Lord residing within the body of the living entity? Arjuna addresses the Lord as Madhusudan because Krishna once killed a demon named Madhu. Actually, these questions, which are of the nature of doubts, should not have arisen in the mind of Arjuna because Arjuna is a Krishna-conscious devotee. Therefore, these doubts are like demons. That's a very good way of putting it. Like if you're referring to Madhusudan, you want to kill the demons, to kill the doubts in your mind. And this is what a devotee of Krishna wants the spiritual master to kill the devotee, kill the doubts within your heart. Because the doubts that arise, it's normal when you're approaching spiritual life to have doubts. And it's good in a lot of ways because you can be coming into contact with complete charlatans, and you have to be introspective about your spiritual life and who this person you're about to give your life to. If it's your spiritual master, you're going to give this person your life. And there have been many people who've given their lives to charlatans, and they've been because they're not pure devotees, they're in the mode of ignorance and passion and lust. They take advantage of their devotees. They take advantage of their disciples. So to find a pure devotee of Krishna is a tough task, but if one is sincere, they can find that devotee, and they take their questions like the demons that are arising, because Mayadevi job in this material world is to create doubts in your mind, like, oh, I don't know about this. You sure you want to give up all your fun in the material world, and you want to, stop drinking and, stop womanizing and eating meat? And those things used to be so much fun. Remember when they started to put this image of, it really wasn't that great. In fact, it might have been really awful, which is what compelled you to, but then you find, okay, spiritual life is a little challenging because you run up against your mind. And in the mind, if you're conditioned, if you're still having desires in your heart, and it's going to be a struggle, because the struggle is you don't want to surrender to Krishna. So that's pretty normal. So it's normal to have doubts, but also when you get more and more in spiritual life and the doubts start to arise, you can say, please kill these demons, take it to your spiritual master, and your spiritual master will say, those are demons in your mind. Exactly that. So therefore these doubts are like demons. Since Krishna is so expert in killing demons, Arjuna here addressed him as Madhusudan so that Krishna might kill the demoniac doubts that arise in Arjuna's mind. Now the word prayana kale meaning time, prayana being death, in this verse is very significant because whatever we do in life will be tested at the time of death. Let me read that again. Now the word prayana kale in this verse is very significant because whatever we do in life will be tested at the time of death. That's a very profound statement. Arjuna fears that at the time of death, those who are in Krishna consciousness will forget the Supreme Lord, because At such a time, body functions are disrupted and the mind may be in a panic-stricken state. So this is a very good question, which is why we cultivate our relationship with Krishna, to remember Krishna at the time of to give our life to Krishna. Because if we're thinking, oh, spiritual life, I'll do that when when I'm real older and a little bit more time. Right now I'm trying to enjoy life and cultivating things and that I like to do. The problem is that you put at the time of death whatever's in your mind, however you've cultivated your life, that will be carried with you at your time of death, and it will be very difficult to remember Krishna. Therefore, Maharaj Kula Shekara, a great devotee, and also because you're dying, it's like you can say things like, oh, death doesn't scare me, or I'm not afraid to die. You don't really know that until you're presented where your body is racked in pain. You can't breathe. You have mucus coming out of your throat that's blocking your breathing. You're just struggling. You're dying, basically, and that's your body goes into a panic-stricken state. Therefore, Maharaj Kula Shekara, a great devotee, prays, my dear Lord, may I die immediately now that I'm healthy, so that the swan of my mind may enter into the stem of thy lotus feet. So he's praying that he just dies now because he's remembering Krishna and his body is healthy and there's not all these things distracting him. This metaphor is used because the swan often takes pleasure in entering the stem of the lotus flower. Similarly, the mind of the pure devotee is drawn to the lotus feet of the Lord. That's very beautiful. Maharaj Kula Shekara fears that at the moment of death, his throat will be so choked up that he will not be able to chant the holy names, so it is better to die immediately. Arjuna questions how one's mind can remain fixed on Krishna's lotus feet at such times. So this is a very profound and important statement, because we all are faced with death. We're all faced with people that we love that have to go through this. I have another brother who's also, his cancer is sort of coming out of his, spreading. And so he's faced with this too, although he's not in the state of dying before death, he's still trying to fight it. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, this is text 3. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Aksharam Brahma Paramam Svabhavo Dhyatmam Muchate Bhuta Bhavodava Bhavodbhava Karo Vishargaha Karma Samginita. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said, Aksharam, indestructible, Brahma, Brahman, Paramam, transcendental, Svabhavaha, eternal nature, Adhyatmam, the self, Ujjate is called, Bhuta Bhava, Udbhava Kara, action producing the material bodies of the living entities. Visargaha, creation, karma, fruit of activities, samginitaha is called. The Supreme Lord said, the indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called the Self. Action pertaining to the development of these material bodies is called karma, or fruitive activities. So, breaking that down, so he's saying that the living entity is also Brahman in the spiritual sense. Indestructible, transcendental living entity, the Jivatma. It's not the body and the mind, because the body and the mind is destructible. His eternal nature is called the Self, right? And then the action that he pertaining to the development of the material bodies is called karma, or fruitive activities, right? So we've touched on that in 3 and 5, chapter 3 and 5, about karmic yoga. purport by his divine grace. Brahman is indestructible and eternally existing, and its constitution is not changed at any time. But beyond Brahman, there is Para Brahman. Brahman refers to the living entity, and Para being great. Para Brahman refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Brahman effulgence, the Brahman energy is Krishna, but Para Brahman is also Krishna, but beyond the Brahman. The constitutional position of the living entity is different from the position he takes in the material world. In the material consciousness, his nature is to try to be the Lord of matter, but in spiritual Krishna consciousness, his position is to serve the Supreme. So this is why he's marginal. We're in between the spiritual and we can be influenced by spiritual, we can be influenced by material. In the material, we want to be the servant. We've served. We want to be the Lord. We have that consciousness. In the spiritual world, in Krishna consciousness, we want to be the servant of Krishna. When the living entity is in the material consciousness, he has to take on various bodies in the material world. That is called karma, or varied creation by the force of material consciousness. In Vedic literature, the living entity is called Jivatma and Brahman, but he is never called Para-Brahman, so we are not the supreme spiritual energy. The living entity Jivatma takes different positions. Sometimes he merges into the dark material nature and identifies himself with matter, and sometimes he identifies himself with the superior spiritual nature. Therefore, he is called the Supreme Lord's marginal energy. According to his identification with material or spiritual nature, he receives a material or spiritual body. In the material nature, he may take a body from any of the 8,400,000 species of life, but in spiritual nature, he has only one body. He has the eternal vigraha, his spiritual form, which is eternal. We all have our own individual spiritual form, spiritual body. But in other forms, we could be whole kinds of things. We could be demigods and spiders and maggots and pigs and trees and bushes and whatever else, humans. We can be 8,400,000 species of life. It could be a tick, insect. But in the spiritual nature, he has only one body. In material nature, he is sometimes manifested as a man, demigod, an animal, a beast, a bird, etc., according to his karma. To attain material heavenly planets and enjoy their facilities, he sometimes performs sacrifices, yajna. But when his merit is exhausted, he returns to earth again in the form of man. So there are particular sacrifices. They are ultimately there to help elevate the consciousness of the living entity, ultimately, come to the point. But they're still fruitive results. So you can see there are a lot of Judeo-Islamic Christian beliefs that they're going to heaven and enjoying in the material world, and you do meritorious activities to get yourself to heaven. That's this. Because the desire to love and serve God is still overshadowed with the desire to enjoy in heaven. Enjoy ourselves, enjoy with our families, live in gold palaces or whatever, and the Islamic is, enjoy virgins, which they can't do in their material, or they drink alcohol and, live in beautiful gardens. It's like, this is a lower form of understanding. In the process of sacrifice, the living entity makes specific sacrifices to attain specific heavenly planets and consequently reaches them. When the merit of sacrifice is exhausted, then the living entity descends to earth in the form of rain. So he falls out. This is what we were talking about before. In the heavenly planets, you could go the form of pleasure and enjoyment is so way beyond what we enjoy in this material world. It's a long period of time, hundreds of thousands of years or millions of years. But you have to come out of that. You have to leave. Take on the form of grain. The grains are eaten by a man and transformed into semen, which impregnates a woman, and thus the living entity once again attains the human form to perform sacrifice, and so repeat the same cycle. So this is also why abortion is bad, because and when they say that the life begins at conception, it actually begins, it doesn't really begin there. It actually is transferred from the grain into the semen, from the semen to the egg, and the living entity is then transferred into the egg, and that's where the birth happens of the child. So then, because the present of the living entity is present within the egg, and the egg has all the facilities to build this, it's like the generation is happening because the living entity is present. So when you abort at any time, whether it's aborting at a conception or aborting 9 months in, doesn't really matter. It's still murder, because it's obstructing, it's killing the facility of the living entity to get back to Krishna eventually. So the living entity is on a spiritual journey no matter where they're at, and if it's being obstructed by people aborting a child, that may be the karmic reaction, but it also gives those people karma in which they will also have to be aborted in another life. In this way, the living entity perpetually comes and goes on the material path. The Krishna conscious person, however, avoids such sacrifices. He takes directly to Krishna consciousness and thereby prepares himself and returns to Godhead. So when people are like, are you saved, or you're not going to go to heaven, it's like, because you're not surrendering to Jesus. We're like, well, we do surrender to Jesus. We surrender to Jesus because Jesus tells us to the right path to take, and that is to love the Lord God with our whole heart and whole mind and whole being. So we cultivate that relationship. We follow the instructions of Lord Jesus. So, but whether we're going to be saved or go to heaven, we don't really care. The devotee doesn't really care. The devotee is not interested in any kind of material benediction from God. The pure devotee wants to just be in the loving service of Krishna. And personalist commentators on the Gita reasonably assume that Brahman takes the form of Jiva in the material world, and to substantiate this, they refer to chapter 15, verse 7 of the Gita. So let's look that up. So in that verse, it says, the living entities in this conditional world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So the word for fragmental means amshaha. So because the fragmental in a material sense is seen as a broken part of a whole. We've covered this actually in Sri Ishopanishad as well, is that the units emanate from the main unit. That's what's said in the invocation. But all the units are complete in themselves. So in this case, although 1 minus 1 would be 0 in math, in the material sense, 1 minus 1 in the spiritual sense, because we're spiritual in essence, is 1. There is nothing less, nothing incomplete from God, because the living entities are fragments of we're achinta veda veda tattva. We're simultaneously similar spiritually, but not but not spiritually. We're similar in quality, but not in quantity. So that's the verse. But this verse also speaks to the living entity as an eternal fragment of itself. The fragment of God, the living entity, may fall down into the material world, but the Supreme Lord, Achyuta, never falls down. Therefore, this assumption that the Supreme Brahman assumes the form of Jiva is not acceptable. It is important to remember that in Vedic literature, Brahman, the living entity, is distinguished from Para Brahman, the Supreme Lord. That's why we have the Para in the front. Text 4. Adi Bhutam Kashara Baba Purushashadi Daivatam Adi Ajnoam Ham Devatra Deho Deha Deha Paritambara Adi Bhutam, the physical manifestation. Kashara, constantly changing. Baba, nature. Purusha, the universal form. Cha, end. Adi Daivatam, including all demigods like the sun and moon. Adi Ajna, the supersoul. Aham, I, Krishna. Eva, certainly. Atra, in this. Dehe, body. Deha Bharitam, of the embodied. Vara, supreme. Text 4, translation. The physical nature is known to be endlessly mutable. The universe is the cosmic form of the Supreme Lord, and I am that Lord represented as the Supersoul dwelling in the heart of every embodied being. So, in this sense, material nature is eternal. It's eternally existing, but it's constantly mutable. It's changing forms. We have a appearance of birth, and atoms and material comes together, is sustained, grows up, expands, and while this is all happening, the living entity is growing up and changing ages. There is matter coming in, there is matter leaving. In fact, the body itself changes like 7 or 8 times completely in the form. You can tell the body of the child is not the same body that I have on now. Those atoms, those molecules, all of those are changed every 3 to 5 years. The body completely changes over, and this is laid out in my spiritual master's book, Who Are You? He explains very thoroughly the scientific, the material scientific studies they've done with the atomic study and fluctuation of atoms in and out of the body. Every 3 to 5 years, the bones change completely, the brain changes completely, the skin is completely changed like every, 20, I have to look at the statistics, but something like a couple weeks, all your skin is completely, and you could know that, like if I scratch my beard, there's like dead skin coming off of my shirt because I get dry chin, right? Or you cut yourself, and what happens? That matter is like washed out, cleaned out, falls on the ground, washes down the sink, right? Those things break down, bugs eat them, they poop them out, and then those matters, those atoms, those molecules, the different chemicals that make up things are taken by other things and made into. So really, in the sense, if you were truly chemical in essence, you would be all over the place. But here you are, you're still here, you're still present, but your chemicals from your body are all over the place. They've been changed, they're mutable. The universe is the cosmic form of the Supreme Lord, and I am that Lord represented as the Supersoul, dwelling in the heart of every embodied being. Purport. Physical nature is constantly changing. Material bodies generally pass through 6 stages. They are born, they grow, they remain for some duration, they produce some byproducts, they dwindle, and then they vanish. This physical nature is called Adi Bhutam. That's a good one to remember. Adi Bhutam. That changes into six stages in your life. because it is created at a certain point and will be annihilated at a certain point, the conception of the universal form of the Supreme Lord that includes all the demigods and all the different planets is called Adi Daivatam. The individual soul, Jiva, accompanies the body. Yeah, we've touched on this already in chapter 2, because Krishna was laying out that the relatives, those relatives that were going to die, that he was so concerned about, was just their bodily dress. They were actually spiritual jivatmas that would not die but would continue on. And so this is the primary understanding of the science of identity, first step of essence. We are not aham brahmasmi. We are not the material body. We are not the material mind. We are spiritual in essence. We do not change in our essence, but our body is consistently changing. This material energy is changing. The Supersoul, plenary representation of Lord Krishna, is called the Paramatma, or Adi Yajna, and is situated in the heart. The word Eva is particularly important in the context of this verse because by this word the Lord stresses that the Paramatma is not different from him. The Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, seated beside the individual soul, is the witness of the individual soul's activities and the source of consciousness. So this is what a debate I was having with somebody recently, and just the idea of consciousness. The idea of consciousness is present because the living entity is present. And that source of that consciousness comes from the Paramatma, comes from Krishna. The source gives the jiva an opportunity to act freely. The Supersoul gives the jiva an opportunity to act freely, and he witnesses his activities. So the Lord in our heart allows us to try to fulfill our desires according to what we want. And he's observing those things, and he's awarding the karmic. We are. It's stated here in the Svetasvatara Upanishad with the two birds on the branch. The Paramatma is observing, watching the Atma, Jivatma, try to eat the fruit of activities of the material world and suffer accordingly, and waiting for him to turn around, waiting for him to say, this is not, why am I, what's going on? Like, who am I? Who am I really? What's the purpose of my life? And then the Paramatma provides that information according to the surrender of the Jivatma. The Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, seated beside the individual soul, is the witness of the individual soul's activities and is the source of consciousness. The Supersoul gives the jiva an opportunity to act freely, and he witnesses his activities. So why does God not stop or force us? Because of love. Krishna is giving us the opportunity to try to be Lord, to try to find our happiness in the material world, even though he knows very well that it won't. The functions of all these different manifestations of the Supreme Lord automatically become clarified for the pure Krishna conscious devotee engaged in transcendental service of the Lord. The gigantic universal form of the Lord is called Adi Daivatam, is contemplated by the neophyte who cannot approach the Supreme Lord in his manifestation as Supersoul. The neophyte is advised to contemplate the universal form whose legs are considered the lower planets and whose eyes are considered the sun and moon and whose head is considered the upper planetary system. So we have a lot of animistic kind of, they view nature as different gods. And let's see, text 5. Anta kale cha mameva smaran muktva kadevaram yaha prayati samadmavam Yate nastaratra samshaya ante kale. At the end of life. Cha also. Mam unto me. Eva certainly. Smaran remembering. Muktva quitting. Kalevaram the body. Ya he who. Prayati goes. Saha he. Madbhavam my nature. Yati achieves. Na not. Asti there is. Atra here. Samshaya doubt. Translation, text 5. And whoever at the time of death quits his body remembering me alone at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. So this is talking about Krishna conscious. So at the time of death, you're thinking about whatever you're thinking about. That's where you where your consciousness will be. If you're thinking about Krishna, you go back to Krishna. This is Krishna consciousness. In this verse, the importance of Krishna consciousness is stressed. Anyone who quits his body in Krishna consciousness is at once transferred to the transcendental abode of the Supreme Lord. The word smaran, remembering, is important. Remembrance of the Lord is not possible for the impure soul who has not practiced Krishna consciousness in devotional service. To remember Krishna, one should chant the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, incessantly, following in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya, being more tolerant than the tree, humbler than the grass, and offering all respect to others without requiring respect in return. In such a way, one will be able to depart from the body successfully, remembering Krishna, and so attain the supreme goal. Wonderful. Text 6. Yam yam vadi vapi smaram bhavam tajan taya jati ante kala kalevaram tam tam evaiti kanteya sadata bhava bhavita yam yam whatever va either api also smaran remembering bhavam nature tayajati give up ante at the end kalevaram in this body tam tam similar eva certainly iti gets kanteya osana kunti sada always tat that bhava state of being bhavi taha remembering. Text 6. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. So the importance of cultivating your relationship with God now, because you don't know how long you're going to be on this planet, to not waste your time cultivating things that you will have to give up, but will be in your consciousness and will shape your consciousness. It will be convoluted your consciousness at the time of death. You could be thinking about things, and you have cultivated your life to be in a pig body, and so your subtle body is shaped like a pig, and then you're thinking about things that pigs like, sex and eating and whatever, and in your next life you'll take on a pig. You won't go back to Krishna. But if you remember Krishna, whatever state a being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. Purport: the process of changing one's nature at the critical moment of death is here explained. How can one die in the proper state of mind? Maharaj Bharat thought of a deer at the time of death, and so was transferred to that form of life. However, as a deer, Maharaj Bharat could remember his past activities. Of course, the cumulative effect of the thoughts and actions of one's life influences one's thoughts at the moment of death. Therefore, the actions of his life determine one's future state of being. If one is transcendently absorbed in Krishna's service, then his next body will be transcendental, spiritual, not physical. Therefore, the chanting of Hare Krishna is the best process for successfully changing one's state of being to transcendental life. And this was a question that was brought up to my spiritual master because, in the state of dying, you tend to have all kinds of problems with your brain, and how was concerned about, but if you've cultivated your relationship, even if you materially forget to chant or to whatever, Krishna will come and take you personally. He's dear to you and you are dear to him. He will remember you. And even my spiritual master has said this time and time again, that Krishna will remember you. So wonderful. One more verse, text 7. Tasmad sarveshu kaleshu mam anushmara Yudhyachad mai arpita mano buddhir mam mevaishyashi ashamshaya. Tasmat, therefore, sarveshu, always, kaleshu, time, mam, unto me, anushmara, go on remembering, yudhya, fight, cha, also, mai, unto me, arpita, surrender, mana, mind, buddhi, intellect, mam, unto me, eva, certainly, eshashi, will attain, ashamshayaha, beyond a doubt. Translation. Therefore, Arjuna should always think of me in the form of Krishna, and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt. So there Krishna is telling Arjuna to do your duty. You have to act in this material world, but act in the material world in devotion to God, to Krishna. And think about me. Think about Krishna, and you will go back to me. So this is a promise, and Krishna is the source of all things, so therefore Krishna's word is the word. This instruction to Arjuna is very important for all men engaged in material activities. The Lord does not say that one should give up his prescribed duties or engagements. So Arjuna wanted to go off and do something else, but Krishna was saying, no, I want you to fight for me. This is your service. This is what you're doing, and you're surrendering your results to me. One can continue them and at the same time think of Krishna by chanting Hare Krishna. This will free one from material contamination and engage the mind and intelligence in Krishna. By chanting Krishna's names, one will be transferred to the supreme planet, Krishna Loka, without a doubt. And so I think we're going to call it there. We'll pick up next time on text 8. Thank you very much. Namaste.